Hello, everyone. Welcome to our roundtable, all about inner work at work. I'm Chip Conley, and I have the privilege of serving as the moderator for the conversation today. To give you a little bit of background on me, I am an author, an entrepreneur, and previously I was the head of global hospitality and strategy for Airbnb, where I was also a strategic advisor for many years. Today, much of my time is spent as the founder of the Modern Elder Academy, the world's first midlife wisdom school. I am passionate about learning at any age, so I'm excited to have the opportunity to chat with four incredible leaders across a variety of industries today. Please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Rebecca Josephson, the Vice President of People Growth and Leadership Development at WarnerMedia, Angela McKenna, Senior Vice President of Global Talent Development at Salesforce, Alicia McMath, Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Compass Group, and last but not least, Isla Ilian, Senior Director of Talent and Leadership Development at Hilton, who's stepping in very last minute. Thank you, Isla, because Gretchen, who is supposed to be with us today, is in Memphis, and there's a lot of technical challenges in Memphis today because of the storm. So thank you for joining us at the last minute. We've got a jam-packed 40 minutes for you, so let's dive right in. So let's start with the first question, which is maybe somber, but it's quite topical. We're all chatting virtually right now, and we know that's because we're in the third year of the pandemic, which has had everlasting effects on the workplace and maybe the future of work. So tell us about some of the most profound changes you've made in your company or industry in order to address the pandemic. And for example, has the Great Resignation impacted your organization? And if so, how? Alicia, would you mind starting off for us?
Yes, hi everyone. I think we all kind of know what happened during the pandemic with our industry, which is the food service industry. The world was shut down. We couldn't socialize in person. There was no opportunity for us to share in a meal or even an event. Coupled with the pandemic, there was massive social unrest happening in the world. And so some of the most profound changes our company has made have really centered around caring for and empowering our people and clients and communities we support and serve. One change that I'm most proud of is the way we intentionally listened and learned and cared for our people during the pandemic and social unrest. We've always conducted engagement surveys, but in 2020, we launched our first ever diversity and inclusion survey to go beyond the pulse of our people and really hear the heart and experiences. As a result of the feedback, we now partner across the business much differently to build a more inclusive culture and empower our people to be the difference on our DEI journey. In addition, we knew we couldn't stop there. We've hosted ongoing focus group conversations, fireside chats, all to provide safe and inclusive environments in which associates are able to bring their authentic selves to work. We also realized that there was a strong need for connectedness and positive opportunities to share purpose during the pandemic. So we created parent groups, Peloton groups, book clubs, movie clubs, walking groups, virtual volunteer opportunities, all just to name a few. From a client perspective, we implemented enhanced cleaning and sanitation programs, putting safety first. We also created new and innovative solutions like touchless technology and contactless ordering platforms to address restrictions placed on our industry and ensure safety and convenience. But I will tell you that the one thing that we also realized in the social unrest that was occurring was that we needed to adapt differently and do more of what we were doing prior to the pandemic, which was really focusing on our women and minority-owned businesses. So we adapted our on-site dining program, which partners with local restaurants and many of whom are women and minority owned. We also developed our diverse supplier accelerator program designed to expand the reach of women and minority owned enterprises by providing mentoring and training needed for growth. So I'd say those are our most profound changes that we brought into the space as a result of the pandemic and what was happening in our world.
Thank you, Alicia. You know, Isla, you come from Hilton. Hilton's in the hospitality business, similar to Alicia, who's in food service. This is one of the biggest industries, or the industries that was most affected by the pandemic. How has Hilton addressed the times that we're in right now?
Yeah, and like Alicia shared in her industry, hospitality was hit very hard. At the beginning of 2020, Hilton was experiencing strong growth. We were recognized as #1 great place to work in the U.S. And suddenly, the hospitality industry was kind of flipped on its head. We went from record high occupancy rates to record lows. And the first thing that was top of mind for us in that time was our team members, our workforce. And so one of the things that we actually first stood up at the beginning of the pandemic was a workforce resource center. Essentially, our recruitment team reverse engineered our recruitment engines to stand up a Hilton curated job board to support team members and help them find temporary employment if they were displaced or furloughed due to the pandemic impact. And so although that meant losing great talent in our business, we wanted to make sure that our team members were okay and had work during that time. I would say, the competition for talent and labor has continued to intensify for us at all levels, whether it's gig or hourly workers or even some of our knowledge workers. They're all exposed to opportunities around different industries and across the globe. And so it was even more clear for us as a company that we needed to, look at our purpose and culture and how do we continue to drive and stay true to who we are for our team members and be transformative in that way. I will just say, our founder's vision over 100 years ago was to fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality. And, that still holds true to us today, despite our industry and the impacts that COVID has had. The way that our team members live by those values and how we, maintain that strong culture has really sustained us during this time and is going to be, a driving force. And if anything, has actually made us stronger during this. So continue to find ways to, support our team members, find different ways to, work, to do the inner work that they'll be doing themselves, I think is something that we're continuing to evolve.
Great. Thank you, Ella. Rebecca, how about WarnerMedia? What have you been doing there?
Yeah, so I would say, similarly in some parts of our business, we were certainly impacted by the pandemic. And I know, Chip, you kind of alluded to the Great Resignation. And I really see it as something that's impacting all companies, all industries. And of course, WarnerMedia is not immune to it. But we like to think of it, and really see it as a movement at this point in time, of course, influenced by stress and uncertainty of the past few years where we've had the time, people have really had the time to reflect, reevaluate their work and their sense of purpose and prioritize what aligns most to their values. And of course, at WarnerMedia, through all of our brands, but if you think about, HBO Max and Warner Brothers Studios, we really feel so fortunate to attract the best talent in the industry, to create those diverse and compelling stories for our customers around the world. So, creativity is really at our core. And for us, that means, as we look inward, a continued focus on nurturing our employees so that we can continue to do what we do best. In addition to just kind of changes and impact of the pandemic, we also had, really a really significant need as a business priority to go direct to consumer with HBO Max, to go global. And it really challenged our workforce to really work differently than we had done before. And, we really had to bring teams together in a way that they never, were working together before to do that. And, we're not competing in the same landscape that we were prior. Now we're competing on a bigger stage with tech giants like Amazon, Google, and Netflix. So it meant, consolidation. A lot of that's happening in our industry. So we had to really go through significant business transformation. And as I think about what that means really for our business, for our employees, we set really ambitious goals and stretched our teams in ways that they hadn't been prior to the pandemic. So we just really want to be super conscious of the risk of burnout for our employees. And for us, that meant taking an approach where we're really fostering balance, well-being, and encouraging them to take that space for innovation and creativity. It's something obviously so core to our brand. So we in addition to kind of standard wellness and employee assistance programs, we really looked at our underlying processes and how we operated and introduced wellness into performance conversations, equipping leaders and employees to be able to have those conversations effectively about their balance and their emotional well-being in a way that felt really psychologically safe to do so. Other kind of tactics we employed were rolling out an unlimited time off policy. And in many parts of our business, folks started to encourage no meeting Fridays to really create a space for that reflection, focus on self-growth, and really being able to kind of take a break from the screen and do some creative and focused thinking.
What a perfect segue, Rebecca. Thank you, because we're now going to talk a little bit more about what does it mean? What does inner work mean? We're here, obviously, on this panel because we're advocates for inner work, and we want to help combat the challenges that get in the way of inner work. But let's be clear, first of all, that inner work is sort of different than outer work. In our outer work, we're often focusing on sitting in meetings, making presentations, talking with customers. People probably think it's exactly what we're paid to do. So often we save inner work for our leisure time, if we decide to prioritize it at all. And yet it is in many ways what helps our outer work is the inner work. So how do we make inner work more effective and impactful at work? How do organizations prioritize inner work at work for our employees, encouraging them to take the time to do so? And what tangible results have you seen from this? Angela, why don't we go to you first, and you can talk a little bit about Salesforce.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chip. And this is a great discussion. It's so nice to hear from some of my peers in other organizations. Look, I think we've all learned a huge amount about ourselves and about our organization over the last 2 years. And like many other companies, we are running at pace. We're also growing as an organization. And so it really caused us to pause. In the beginning, it was, let's do more for people. Let's do webinars. Let's do wellness. Let's do, a whole series of encouraging people to attend more things. And I would sort of describe it as a journey from what I would call everybody take a break and go for a walk, do a walking meeting, to today. I think we're getting much smarter and more intentional about things like personal boundaries. So doing that inner work has to be role modeled in the organization. And that's very difficult. It's, not part of really our corporate experience over many, many years. So how do you bring in some tangible things? Some of the things that we have done are exactly the same. We've done wellness days. We actually do what we call a sync week, where there are no meetings. We're communicating via Slack, for example. And being intentional about that as an organization is really important. In our leadership development programs, we also introduced journaling, and that's become something. I've actually got my own journal here as well. It's become something that I think is much more prevalent in our organization today, is encouraging our leaders and our employees to sense make. This is probably one of the most important times for people to take the time to sense make. And I love how BetterUp describe inner work. It isn't about, necessarily meditating or doing yoga. It is really about pausing and taking the time to reflect on what's going on for me right now. How am I showing up for myself? How am I showing up for my family? How am I showing up at work? And it's one of the things that I don't think as organizations we've necessarily encouraged or role modeled in the past. And I think it is going to be a huge part of the future, how we come out of this period, and then what work is going to look like in the future. So those are just a few of the things that I would say we've been at an organizational level doing, but then also from a role modeling perspective, if you're not seeing it role modeled, it's very difficult to operate in a system where you feel like you're the only.
Wow, don't you all love those two verbs, role modeling and sense making? Thank you for that. Rebecca, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Angela, I love what you say about the role modeling because, I can even just think from my own personal experience as we're, kind of grappling this even for our own teams, it's, you've got to be really conscious of how you're showing up for those on your team and really setting those best practice examples. So that's a really great kind of reminder to us all. I would say, in addition to some of what I've already described, another, really important approach and tactic we've taken is the introduction and scaled approach that we've taken for one-on-one coaching. And for this has been extremely valuable. In the past, executive coaching was really reserved for, the most senior level of leadership. And we've offered that one-on-one coaching to managers at all levels. And what it's doing is really creating that dedicated space and time during the work hours to be able to have focused conversations that, are really centered around improving oneself and looking inward and being able to really take a pause to think about what's giving you joy, both personally and professionally. And what we're seeing in turn is that for managers who take advantage of the one-on-one coaching program are that they're starting to adopt that coaching mindset. And that can be really impactful when they in turn, have conversations with members of their team and role model for their team. It's really a different approach that can really shift mindsets, but most importantly, kind of demonstrate that doing inner work is just as important as what you do kind of in your day-to-day business. So that's really had a great kind of impact on us as an organization. And I think, it's something that, will continue to really be part of the expectations we set for ourselves going forward.
Thank you. Isla.
Yeah, it's honestly so refreshing to hear you, Rebecca and Angela, share some of the things you're doing in your organizations, because we're doing very similar things at Hilton, from the one-to-one coaching to looking at some of those flexibility offerings. We implemented no meeting Fridays and had different sabbatical, programs and part-time schedules that we really encouraged our team members to look at, of really just looking at flexibility as a whole and what that means to them. We learned very early in the pandemic that there is no one size fits all, solution when it comes to flexibility. And so what that means for our hotel team members, whether that's advanced work schedules so they can plan around childcare and other family needs, or for our corporate team members, looking at hybrid work arrangements and different schedules to really support flexibility and allowing them to figure out where they can dedicate time for inner work and other things that are important to them in their life. I will just add one additional thing that I think has been really important to us as a company that we quickly learned is, from the COVID health crisis, that it evolved to really more of a mental well-being and caregiving crisis. And so we saw a need to really empower our leaders and team members to talk about mental health, mental well-being in a different level. And so we launched a campaign really around the world around mental wellness, along with a hub full of resources to support our team members and leaders to talk about different mental wellness topics, to share with each other, to have access to a dedicated Hilton counselor, and continue that dialogue around different topics. What we found in surveying our team members, there was 80%, of our team members saying we're more comfortable talking about mental wellness with our managers, which was 10% higher in just a few months. So another example of how, we're encouraging that dialogue around flexibility, mental wellness, and doing that inner work that I think is so important. We also recently just launched a partnership with Guild to continue to support team members looking at continuous education for free and, keep that learning and growing for themselves. So I don't think the work is going to end here. Again, there's no one size fits all solution, but we want to, create that space for team members to be able to do that inner work and grow within our organization.
Yeah,
Thank you so
I'm just going to make you jump in if you don't mind, because I agree so much. What we're really trying to do is build growth mindset. And so, kind of the learning and support that we offer to employees has been so valued. And we've rolled out a number of different types of learning strategies, by way of just engaging and inspiring external thought leaders, or even, having folks, senior leadership across our organization, share their own personal experiences and be vulnerable. And it's been so appreciative, but probably what was most impactful was the opportunities where we brought employees together and they were able to learn from each other and share experiences through group coaching. And so it was something just wanted to add there, because I think, certainly as HR practitioners, we really feel an extreme obligation to be able to support our teams and employees, no matter what their needs are, in a flexible and engaging way.
Thank you, Rebecca. Those are a lot of great examples, and it's a really perfect segue to our next question, which relates to the idea of how do we give people a greater sense of belonging in their workplace, and by feeling that they can belong, how does it help them live up to their full potential? When I was at Airbnb, one of the things we created was an employee resource group that was sort of unusual, an ERG in Silicon Valley. We called it Wisdom at Airbnb. And it was focused on older employees in the workplace. ERGs have become a real popular way for us to help create diverse populations to feel more comfortable and a sense of belonging. So how are your organizations building inclusive leadership in workplaces? And how does inner work layer into that? Alicia, would you like to start?
Sure. I think first I want to say everything that everyone's mentioned so far has really been great to hear. And it's so wonderful to hear that we're all leaning in the same way. I think at Compass Group, what we've learned over the pandemic is similar to what everyone else has mentioned, that we need to listen more. We needed to ensure that our managers were really trying to and making sure they understood where their employees were. Really taking time out of their day, not to only ask the question, but really ensure that that associate knew that we cared about them, that they were a part of the Compass Group family. And so for us, when we start thinking about building an inclusive leader, we do focus on our ERGs. I will tell you that amongst other things, I just feel like our ERGs are literally the real champions helping us to build inclusive leaders and our inclusive culture. They lead with passion and purpose, and they help volunteer to help identify areas of improvement within the business and continue to provide opportunities. They literally are the heartbeat. I start there because most of what we do comes from conversations with our ERGs and business leaders. I think what we've done also is encouraged our leaders to think outside the box. Everything's been so work-related prior to the pandemic. We have leaders saying, like, what do you enjoy? Do you want to take a ride, a bike ride? Is that helpful for you? And then that's built into wealth, because, right, health is wealth. And if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're really not doing what you need to do for yourself. We have really thought about inclusive leadership from a training perspective also, but we also know that we have to meet people where they are to help build them better for tomorrow. So if that means providing e-learnings to really democratize what's happening from a learning perspective and providing different solutions, we've thought about ways and created training opportunities that, people have more access to information, because that's been critical. That has been where we've seen the most challenge. We're pretty excited that we're also partnering with Guild. We're leaning in with our frontline associates, doing things that we've never done in the past, and thinking about them in ways that we haven't thought about, and moving forward in such a great way, helping them from a socioeconomic advancement and helping them to grow within their personal lives and their careers. With our salaried managers, I believe, Stephanie may have mentioned it, we have mentorship and sponsorship programs, but we also do reverse mentoring, because we think as important as it is to have the senior leadership team pour into those junior associates, it's important for our associates to be able to speak their truth, their experience, to help educate those senior leaders. We've also established mentoring circles, because we understand that, everyone has different needs. Those mentoring circles literally provide inner work opportunities where people are sharing what's happening with them mentally, what's happening with them within their families, which have fostered and helped us build some of those same groups that I spoke about earlier, like our parenting groups. And I think last but not least, I think some other ways that we are building inclusive leaders for our industry specifically. As we built a women in culinary program, because there's such a deficit of women culinarians in our industry, fewer in leadership. In this program, we not only recognize amazing culinarians and their business expertise, but we help expose them to leaders that can kind of share in their experiences, talk about the challenges, right? Because that's a part of helping people move and building that inclusive culture, really realizing that we're all in this together, and then also providing ongoing mentoring circles for support. But again, it's everything. It's really coaching our managers to ensure that they're having conversations and providing activities for their teams, or allowing their teams the space to not be in the moment, really take a personal day and let it be a personal day. Coming back and saying, how can we help you re-energize and re-motivate and kind of move forward and helping us in the business? If that's where their lines are. The passion comes first, and we are really concerned, in helping our people and building that inclusive culture and leaders.
Thank you so much, Alicia. How about you, Isla?
Oh, I mean, just to build on what Alicia said, and, it's so refreshing to hear that so many organizations are thinking about this. And we at Hilton, I believe, have really always been, focused on diversity and inclusion. It's very much part of our DNA and creating that, inclusive workplace for all. It's a topic I'm personally very passionate about. And so, the way we focused on it as a company is in three kind of ways: around our culture, our talent, and marketplace. Our culture and how we lead, behavior change and really ensure diversity across all aspects of our business. Our talent and how we look at inclusive practices and as part of every part of the talent life cycle, from recruitment and hiring to development and the retention of our talent. And then our marketplace, creating a more inclusive place in the society and communities that we serve through external partnerships, through our Hilton Effects Foundation, where we partner with a number of nonprofits, to even looking at supplier diversity and who we partner with to support our hotels. So, that is very much a focus for us as an organization. Last year, we actually shared externally our representation goals and our commitment to reach global gender parity and 25% ethnic diversity at all corporate leadership levels by 2027. And, I will say, while the hospitality industry has been hit really hard, especially in the last 2 years, we've actually leaned in even more to this work. Our team member resource groups, our employee resource groups are really a driving force in how we continue to drive our business strategy around, supporting and helping our talent, looking at how we celebrate our cultures and communities, to also really leading our, supporting our leaders with how we talk about diversity and inclusion and how they can be better allies and lead in this space. We've started a whole Courageous Conversation series to talk about, different topics around diversity and inclusion and equity, including race and gender inequalities and mental wellness topics that maybe in the past were uncomfortable or not easy to, address in the workplace, but really bringing those to light and, continuing to remind our leaders and team members that vulnerability is a strength, and for them to have the courage to, open up that dialogue and conversation with their teams. We're really seeing that, continue to drive our culture and create that inclusive workplace for all. So a lot more work ahead for us, but we're definitely on a great journey here.
Beautiful. Thank you. Angela, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's so heartening to hear the efforts that are going on across so many industries, and my goodness, are they needed? And, at Salesforce, one of our values is equality, and we have a phenomenal Office of Equality, and also our equality group leaders and our all the participants across our organization are doing so much tremendous work. I thought I would talk about, for me personally, 2 examples in the spirit of inner work, because I do believe that you can't really see other people until you really know yourself. And in the spirit of this session today, I think there's probably 2 things that come to mind for me of things that we've done and tried at Salesforce that I believe are making a difference. one of which is a partnership with Google. It's not a program we created. It's actually originally came from Google, called I Am Remarkable. And many different organizations have adopted it as well. If you haven't, I'd really look into it as well. And it is a really empowering program where it helps anyone in an organization, be they, man, woman, underrepresented minority, those of us who've come from cultures where, it's not the done thing, based on your gender or your culture, to actually speak up and talk about how you are remarkable. And that's something that was really uncomfortable for me because, I've grown up in a culture which was that self-promotion, and that's not a good thing. So we did a lot of work within our organization, and we've actually done a train the trainer, and we've had a phenomenal response to that because there are so many voices that are not being heard. And yes, it's totally, I'll talk in a moment about inclusive leadership. It's also about creating a community of support and confidence for people to find their voice. The second thing, so that's one thing. The second practical thing I would say is we firmly believe that the real work takes place inside teams. I think that learning and development programs can be tremendous catalysts for change, but to go deeper and do true transformational work around being inclusive leader, that has to happen in your team, with your leader, with the team members. And we created a teaming practice inside Salesforce 2.5, 3 years ago, because we were finding that people would go to a program, they would have a phenomenal experience, they would go back and bring those learnings to their team, but we hadn't really shifted the system within which people were working. So now we have a team of folks, and we also do train the trainer. People are certified as internal team coaches, and we go inside teams and go deeper on inclusive practices. So those are just a couple of examples that I think have made a difference in the spirit of doing inner work.
That's very inspiring. Thank you. Before we wrap up, let's pull out the crystal ball. That's always fun, right? The future of inner work at work. What do you think are the irreversible shifts that have occurred in the workplace, in your opinion? Is inner work at work here to stay? And what's your vision? Rebecca, let's start with you.
I believe it's here to stay. I certainly hope so. I think we've made so much progress over the last several years to really shine a light on this, and certainly at WarnerMedia we'll continue to do so. When I was kind of thinking about what the largest irreversible shift is that I'm seeing is, I think the role of a manager has changed so significantly over the recent years. And obviously, I think accelerated by stress of the pandemic, increasing political and social unrest, and just this general moment in time where employees have had that moment to really reevaluate their priorities and values and what they expect to get from their manager or from their employer. So, as leaders, I think we need to be in tune with the whole employee and anticipate and react to needs and encourage employees to really kind of look inward and focus on personal and professional development to deliver those optimal results. So, we know that now that, of course, if folks can come to work and bring their whole selves to work, they're going to be able to do their best work. So for this reason, I think it is something that, we'll continue to prioritize and support our talent. So really we can kind of continue to grow and thrive in this complex and ever-changing world that we live in.
Thank you. Angela, what's your thinking?
Yeah, I'm really going to build on that point because I love this conversation. I remember years ago hearing a quote that the work of the past was physical work. The work of the present is the head. So, we value IQ, we value intellect, we value like what school you went to, how clever are you? And the work of the future is the work of the heart. And I really wanted that to be true a few years ago because I was like, please let that be the future. And I really am now seeing that it is true. I was talking to a colleague earlier today about this idea of success in the future inside a workplace looks like the integration of what we have in the past, I suppose, traditionally described as male traits and female traits. And it's the integration of masculine and feminine leadership that actually brings the whole person. So valuing as much emotional capacity, emotional literacy as we do, like talking about, really sort of, task oriented work. Integrating both of those together is really where I believe the future of inner work lies.
Isn't it interesting that the word integrating has its root in integrity? And it's when we are integrating, we feel in an integrity. And yet so often at work, we feel quite compartmentalized. And it's the process of growing whole in integrating that gives us that sense of feeling in integrity with ourselves. Alicia, any last thoughts?
May I just say, maybe it had to take something like a pandemic to bring that change about, because we're like our work and our lives are together now. Yeah.
It's time to integrate. Alicia, last thoughts on the future of inner work at work?
Yeah, I think that my co-hosts have definitely summed it up well. I definitely was going to speak about just the change, the irreversible shift in managers and the way that we as people managers are now responsible for what happens in our associates' lives, making sure that they have that opportunity to really focus on self, to ensure that they are able to bring their best self, whole self, authentic selves to work. I think inner work is definitely here to stay. Like so many, we and I have always wanted to see this change. That quote is beautiful. I think that what the pandemic has taught us more than anything is that the need to focus on the best love and care of all, which is self-love and self-care, is literally the most critical thing you can do for yourself. As employers and employees, we're all trying to figure out what this future looks like. The way for us to be in this world together, that intersection of work meets life, balance no longer exists. It is, how do you ensure that coming together is what it needs to be, and that you're fostering an environment for your people to feel like you have their best interest at heart and their inner work is just as important as their outer work. And that's what I see it as.
And it is that inner work that definitely fuels the outer work. And I think that's one of the things that we've learned in the last few years, and especially during the pandemic. Well, needless to say, the future of the world and our working world looks bright. And I applaud leaders like you who are driving positive change so that employees have a more fulfilling experience at work. I think it's wonderful that Salesforce, WarnerMedia, Compass Group, and Hilton are participating today and letting all of your employees in on the secret of inner work. Hopefully after today, it won't be a secret anymore. Maybe we'll start to see custom inner work out of office messages soon enough. I hope so. Next up, we're going to switch gears to the NBA with the incredible and incredibly tall Pau Gasol giving us some meditation tips and tricks. Thank you again, Alicia, Angela, Isla, and Rebecca, for your thoughts and vision today, and take care.